Welcome to today's deep dive. Imagine you are scrolling through housing apps on your phone.
We've all been there.
Right. You look at the prices, you look at your savings, and you just think, how is a normal working person supposed to afford a home right now?
It's a genuinely daunting feeling.
It really is. And if that sounds familiar to you, you are definitely not alone. Today, we're focusing on a highly detailed policy briefing centered on California's proposed AB 2433.
Which was just introduced for the 2025-2026 legislative session.
Exactly. Also known as the Affordable Homes Bonus Law. Now, our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack how this bill attempts to solve the housing crisis, specifically for what policy wonks call the missing middle. And more importantly, we're going to explore the hidden financial mechanics and the long-term risks of affordable homeownership that, frankly, often get swept completely under the rug.
We really are looking under the hood today.
Yeah.
And what makes this particular briefing so valuable is its perspective. It isn't just, a theoretical white paper drafted by a think tank or written from a balcony in the state
Well,
capitol.
that's much more grounded.
It is. It's actually signed by Daniel Steele, who serves as the treasurer of the watercolors at La Quinta Homeowners Association.
Which is such a crucial detail. That is exactly why this document has such a sharp, on-the-ground focus on the real-world impact of HOA's homeowners associations.
Right.
It's written by someone who literally manages the books and sees the daily financial realities for a housing community.
Exactly. And my goal today is to help us look past the usual political talking points that surround housing legislation.
The rhetoric can get pretty loud on this stuff.
It definitely can. So we are going to remain completely objective and examine the actual structural blueprints of the real estate market that this bill proposes.
Just the facts.
Right. We want to understand not just what the legislation says on paper, but how its mechanics would actually function in the real world over the next half century.
Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly is the blueprint here? What is AB 2433 actually trying to build?
Well, the briefing points out that this bill is essentially a modernization of an existing density bonus law.
Okay.
But it is not just about building more raw units. It is a fundamental rebrand.
A rebrand in what way?
It shifts the focus away from just packing in as many rental apartments as possible and puts a heavy emphasis on for-sale homeownership.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, it grants 2 additional incentives or concessions to developers, but only if they include deed-restricted for-sale units for low and moderate-income families.
And that right there is the target, right? The missing middle.
Precisely. These are the folks who make too much money to qualify for heavily subsidized housing, but nowhere near enough to buy a standard market-rate home in today's market.
It's that awkward financial gray area. So to achieve that very specific goal, the bill introduces several major structural changes to how we build. And one of the most fascinating shifts is what the briefing refers to as the FA fix.
Yes, the FAR fix.
I saw that term in the briefing, the floor area ratio fix. Honestly, it sounds like pure zoning jargon. How does that actually change what a developer builds in my neighborhood?
I know it sounds incredibly technical, but it fundamentally changes the architecture of a city.
Really? How so?
Under the old rules, density was calculated by a rigid unit per acre count. Think of it like a strict limit on the number of front doors you can have on a piece of land.
Okay, so counting doors.
Right. So if a developer is limited to exactly 50 units on a lot, the economic incentive is to build 50 tiny studio apartments to maximize the return on investment.
Because they just want to squeeze as much profit out of those 50 doors as possible.
Exactly. But by calculating density based on the site's total floor area ratio, which is basically the total allowable volume of building space, the rules completely change.
So you are no longer counting doors.
No, you are measuring livable space.
Oh, I see. So if the developer has a massive permitted volume of space, like a big invisible box on the lot, they have the flexibility to design the interior however they want within that box.
Precisely. It allows them to build larger, livable, family-sized condos and townhomes, rather than just cramming in tiny apartments to hit a door count quota.
That makes a lot of sense for families trying to actually buy a home. And the briefing also mentions geographic flexibility.
Yes, that's a big one.
It says the bill eliminates the contiguous site requirement. Does that mean the affordable units and the market rate units a developer builds no longer have to be physically connected on the exact same plot of land?
That's right. They can be placed dynamically outside the immediate project area.
Wow, okay. We'll definitely need to circle back to that later. But first, the most controversial mechanism in this blueprint seems to be the use by right expansion.
Yes, use by right.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Use by right almost sounds like a VIP pass for developers. Does that mean they just get to skip the line for permits?
Effectively, yes. The bill mandates that qualifying projects can bypass discretionary local reviews and certain hurdles under the California Environmental Quality Act,
Which is commonly known as CEQA, right?
right, CEQA. It allows projects to get approved much faster by taking the discretion out of the hands of local city councils.
Wait, so they just bypass the environmental review? I can imagine that sparks some serious debate.
It absolutely does.
Looking at it objectively, what are the structural pros and cons of giving developers that kind of VIP pass?
Well, objectively weighing the analysis in the briefing, the advantages are very clear. Streamlined approvals prevent projects from stalling due to local opposition.
What's often referred to as NMBY, or not in my backyard litigation.
Exactly. By cutting through years of potential legal battles, it provides vital economic feasibility for developers.
Especially in expensive areas, I imagine.
Oh, definitely. In high-cost coastal areas, standard zoning can essentially guarantee a financial loss before a shovel even hits the dirt. These concessions make building missing middle projects financially viable.
But obviously, the flip side of bypassing local review is a complete loss of municipal control. The briefing warns that cities lose their ability to negotiate design elements. You might end up with mass-produced density that completely clashes with the existing character of a neighborhood.
And this raises an important question about the environmental and infrastructural impacts.
Because they're bypassing those CEQA hurdles to expedite the process.
Exactly. The briefing notes there could be unmitigated, localized environmental impacts. And we aren't just talking about endangered species here.
Right, we are talking about urban impacts.
Yes, increased traffic bottlenecks at small intersections, loss of sunlight, or severe shading issues for neighboring properties.
Just putting a massive building next to a single-family home.
Exactly. And even disrupted airflow or wind tunnels in dense urban cores.
And the briefing also outlines the risk of market rate backdoors. This is a fascinating loophole to me.
It's a very real concern outlined in the text.
A developer could potentially use a very small percentage of affordable units, say, dedicating just 5 to 10% of the total project to the missing middle, as leverage to gain massive sweeping zoning bonuses.
Right. They use that tiny slice of affordability to build massive high-end luxury developments.
Which ties directly into perhaps the most crucial infrastructure point highlighted in the briefing.
The infrastructure strain, yes. The bill mandates density, but it doesn't allow cities to require corresponding infrastructure upgrades from the developers.
Oh, wow. So you might be adding 500 new residents to a neighborhood, but the developer isn't required to expand the capacity of the local sewers.
Or widen the roads, or add new park space to accommodate them.
That seems like it could seriously degrade local services over time.
Exactly. It's a massive structural shift in how cities manage growth.
Okay, so we have this high-level macro view of the zoning laws. Let's bring this down to the ground level and shift focus to the human element, the reality check.
This is where it gets very practical.
Right, because AB 2433 relies heavily on these deed-restricted units. It completely rewrites the traditional real estate transaction. How does this actually affect the people involved? The buyers, the sellers, and the developers.
Let's start with the buyer.
Okay, imagine you are a moderate income family. You finally get to buy one of these homes, but you are entering into an equity sharing model, right?
Correct. When you buy a deed-restricted affordable unit, you don't get 100% of your home's appreciation.
That's a tough pill to swallow.
It is. When you eventually sell, a portion of that profit is split with a local housing agency. It fundamentally alters the traditional American dream of using a starter home to build foundational wealth.
And even getting to that point is difficult, isn't it? Because these buyers face significant financing hurdles.
Very significant. Traditional lenders are often very hesitant to underwrite mortgages for deed-restricted properties because the resale formulas are so incredibly complex.
So it creates a massive barrier to entry before the buyer even gets the keys.
Exactly.
But let's say they jump through all those hoops. They get the mortgage, they move in, they are safe. Right.
Well, what's fascinating here is what the briefing identifies as the HOA assessment vulnerability.
Ah, the Homeowners Association.
Yes. And remember, the author of this briefing is an HOA treasurer, so this is where the on-the-ground reality really hits hard. These low-income buyers are still subject to standard, uncapped HOA dues and special assessments.
Anyone who has ever lived in an HOA knows that a special assessment is basically the two scariest words in the English language.
They really are.
Yeah.
Imagine you are a qualified buyer. You stretched your budget to move in. 6 months later, the building's roof starts leaking, or the elevator breaks down.
Oh, no.
The HOA issues a massive special assessment. Let's say it's $15,000 per unit.
But your income is legally restricted?
Yes, and the resale price of your home is restricted.
Yeah.
But your portion of that unexpected repair bill is absolutely not restricted.
So you just have to pay it.
You have to pay it. The briefing warns that if those fees spike, the baseline affordability of the unit is completely destroyed. The family has no extra income to absorb the blow, leading to a very high risk of foreclosure.
That is a terrifying prospect for a first-time buyer. A leaky roof doesn't care about your income bracket.
Not at all.
Now, what about when that buyer eventually becomes a seller? Say their family has grown, they need a bigger place. They find out very quickly that they cannot just list their home on the open market to the highest bidder on Zillow.
Not at all. The resale price is formulaically capped. It is strictly tied to the area median income, or AMI.
So it's completely detached from the normal housing market.
Completely. The state wants to ensure that the next buyer is also income qualified, so the price of the house can only rise as fast as the median income of the region rises, regardless of what the broader housing market is doing.
And the financial compression for the seller doesn't stop there.
No, it doesn't.
Any initial down payment assistance they receive from a local program or any silent second mortgages must be fully repaid upon the sale.
So their net proceeds just keep shrinking.
Plus, their buyer pool is incredibly tiny.
Because the deed restriction isn't just a one-time thing for the first buyer. The briefing emphasizes that this restriction lasts for 45 to 55 years.
Half a century.
Yes, and it carries over to the next owner.
Imagine trying to sell a house, but your buyer pool is limited exclusively to people who fit a strict, narrow income bracket, who can secure a complex mortgage, and who are completely willing to sign away half a century of their own equity rights.
It drastically reduces market liquidity.
Now, on the other side of this transaction is the developer. They face their own set of unique realities under this bill, don't they?
They do. Developers benefit from what is called incentive stacking.
Incentive stacking.
Okay. Since their profit margins on the affordable units are intentionally thin or even non-existent, they are allowed to stack bonuses to sell more market rate units to offset those losses.
So they make up the loss on the luxury side.
Exactly. However, to get those benefits, they are burdened with massive administrative tasks.
Like what?
Well, the developer often has to manage the initial marketing and run the complex lottery processes to select the qualified buyers for the affordable units. It is an administratively heavy burden.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The briefing dives deep into the long-term psychological and economic consequences of that 45 to 55-year deed restriction we just mentioned.
Yes.
They call it the reinvestment paradox.
This is a crucial economic paradox to understand. The law is designed with the noble goal of preserving affordability for the next generation of buyers by locking in those price caps for up to 55 years.
Which sounds great on paper.
It does.
Ah.
But in doing so, it severely disincentivizes taking care of the property today.
Right, let's walk through this. Imagine you buy one of these units, 5 or 10 years go by, and your kitchen cabinets are falling apart, or the plumbing needs a major overhaul.
Standard scenario.
In a normal, unrestricted house, you might drop $20,000 to remodel that kitchen, knowing that you will likely get that money back in a higher resale value when you eventually move.
But under the AB 2433 formulas, there is a negative return.
A negative return?
Yes. Major upgrades, like a new HVAC system, a roof repair, or that $20,000 kitchen remodel, are treated as unrecoverable sunk costs.
Because your resale price is hard-capped by the area median income.
Exactly. No matter how nice you make the house, you cannot raise the asking price to recoup your investment.
So if you spend 20 grand, that money is just gone.
Gone.
Which leads directly to what the briefing calls affordable decay. Why would you fix anything? You wouldn't.
Exactly. If you are a homeowner in one of these units, your logical, rational financial move is to preserve your own capital for a future unrestricted home purchase.
You save your money for your next house.
So you are financially incentivized to perform only the bare minimum maintenance. Maybe a fresh coat of paint, but certainly not structural upgrades.
And over a 55-year span.
This dynamic means that restricted units will visibly and structurally decline in condition compared to their market rate peers in the exact same neighborhood.
Wait, what if the roof literally caves in? Or there is a massive plumbing emergency? Can't the homeowner just go to the bank and get a standard home equity line of credit, a ETLOC, to fix it?
No, and that triggers a liquidity crisis.
Really?
No ELOCs.
In a normal situation, yes, you tap your equity. But here, the property's equity is largely owned by the public restriction. Traditional banks will not lend against equity that the homeowner doesn't legally have the right to access.
Oh, wow.
Homeowners are completely locked out of accessing their own equity to fund emergency repairs.
It creates a scenario where the physical housing stock is practically guaranteed to degrade over the half-century lifespan of the deed restriction.
The briefing frames this as creating future liabilities rather than sustainable communities.
So how do we prevent these communities from becoming future liabilities? We can't just build these homes and watch them fall apart.
No, we can't.
The briefing doesn't just point out the problems, right? It actually offers 5 strategic mitigations to fix the structural flaws between building the units and actually maintaining them. Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, these mitigations are about aligning public policy goals with practical human financial realities.
That makes total sense. Let's go through them.
The first recommendation targets that terrifying HOA assessment vulnerability we discussed earlier.
Right.
The briefing suggests mandating dedicated HOA subsidy structures.
Because low-income homeowners simply cannot absorb a sudden $15,000 special assessment for an elevator repair.
Precisely. So the legislation should require developers to establish robust, pre-funded reserve accounts specifically for the restricted units before anyone even moves in.
Okay, that's one way.
Alternatively, it could legally mandate that the market rate units in a development permanently subsidize the HOA dues of the affordable units.
I can imagine some market rate buyers might push back on paying higher dues to subsidize their neighbors.
They probably would.
But looking at the math here, it seems like a structural necessity to protect the baseline affordability.
It is.
The second recommendation targets that negative return on home improvements we talked about with the kitchen remodel. The briefing suggests implementing capital improvement credits.
This is a very practical fix.
Mm-hmm.
You amend the resale formulas so that owners can add the documented out-of-pocket costs of structural repairs or energy efficiency upgrades to their capped resale price.
Oh, why?
It's a way to prevent that slumlord owner effect by actually letting the owner recoup the cost of keeping the place highly livable and updated.
That feels a lot more fair to the homeowner. Recommendation number 3 addresses the 55-year maintenance mindset with tiered equity sharing.
Right. Instead of a flat equity cap where you get almost nothing regardless of how long you stay, the state should shift to a sliding scale.
How would that work?
The longer a homeowner resides in and meticulously maintains the property, the larger the share of appreciation they get to keep upon resale.
Oh, I like that.
This elegantly aligns the public goal of long-term affordability with the private, deeply human financial incentive of long-term stewardship.
Recommendation number 4 is about closing the investor-owner loophole. The briefing calls for continuous monitoring and strict auditing.
Which is vital.
They want to ensure these deed-restricted units aren't being snapped up by corporate entities or investors who mask themselves as qualified buyers only to covertly rent the units out at market rates.
Exactly. The goal is to keep these homes in the hands of actual working families who need them to live in.
And the final recommendation is aimed directly at the developers. It suggests tying those massive zoning incentives strictly to construction rather than just the initial entitlements.
Yes.
So a developer can't just secure the lucrative zoning bonuses, instantly inflate the value of the land on paper, and then just flip the entitled land to someone else without ever laying a single brick.
Correct. The goal here is to ensure that the developer only reaps the rewards of the legislation if they actually break ground and add physical homes to the housing supply.
So, what does this all mean? When you step back and look at the entirety of this briefing, AB 2433 is undeniably a bold, aggressive attempt to create homeownership opportunities for the missing middle.
It absolutely is.
It tackles the physical barriers of zoning with the floor area ratio fix and streamlined approvals. But the hidden mechanics that this document exposes, the rigid equity caps, the complex and uncapped HOA vulnerabilities, and that massive 55-year reinvestment paradox really show that getting the buildings constructed is only half the battle.
It's just step 1.
Maintaining the physical and financial health of those affordable units over half a century is the real challenge. It requires careful, strategic mitigations to avoid creating built-in decay.
It truly highlights how deeply interconnected zoning laws, real estate finance, and human behavior really are.
They can't be separated.
You cannot just mandate affordability. Policies have to account for how people will rationally respond to the financial incentives or disincentives placed right in front of them.
Now, before we go, there's one hidden geographic consequence of this bill we haven't touched on yet. a risk of modern-day segregation. Think about that geographic flexibility provision we discussed earlier.
The one eliminating the contiguous site requirement.
Exactly. The one that allows developers to dynamically place their mandated affordable units and their luxury market rate units on completely different plots of land. What does that mean for the future layout of our cities? Could this well-intentioned flexibility inadvertently lead to highly segregated neighborhoods?
That is a profound question.
Imagine a scenario where developers consistently place their shiny, amenity-rich market-rate buildings in one highly desirable zip code, while legally grouping all the deed-restricted affordable units in an entirely separate, perhaps under-resourced area across town. The law might create the units, but at what cost to community integration? It is definitely something to keep an eye on as these policies take shape in the real world.
It's definitely something to consider.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We hope this gave you a clearer, more grounded view of the hidden mechanics shaping the future of housing. Keep asking questions and stay curious.